Before the video does begin, I just want to give a quick heads up that both my guilds are recruiting. Dishonor our S-League guild competitive top 5. We are looking for some good scorer members to potentially join us and get the best rewards possible. If you are someone that can beat all very hard guild quests and even Nightmare with very good scores, feel free to hit me up on Discord. Likewise, my second guild, this is more of a casual guild where the only requirement is to beat hard and very hard. And once more, if you are interested in joining that, feel free to hit me up on Discord. But yeah, we have 2 guilds currently recruiting, a competitive S rank and a casual A. If you want to join any of them, just message me on Discords. Alright, lads, so the Nightmare difficulty of Guild Quest is finally returning. In this case, starting next week, we are going to have the Nightmare difficulty for the Quincy Guild Quest, the Melee Quincy Guild Quest in particular, and also the Ranged Nightmare Guild Quest. These quests, of course, in particular, are going to be very difficult, but it does give us a great time to try out our most powerful characters in the game to try and tackle these difficult quests, and therefore do get extra rewards if you can beat them. As always, though, before we do have a look at the best characters and teams, it's very important to understand how this difficulty quest is going to work, at least in terms of the stats of the enemies. In this case, on the Nightmare difficulty, the first boss itself is going to have around 29 million HP, and in the final boss, the most difficult boss, it's going to have 45 million HP. A very important stat to look at here is going to be the defense stat, as for the most part, every single boss here does have over 4,500 defense. This means if you are using a normal attack damage character, they are going to have an attack stat higher than 4,500. Otherwise, you're just going to be doing 1 damage. The best way to set up your characters is going to be a killer sticker or Masanga, a fortification pill, and also a 50% SP item depending on the affiliation of the character you are bringing. Their links are always going to be recharge and an extra damage effect, whether that's recharge and full stamina damage, recharge and strong attack damage, or recharge and more strong attack damage when at full stamina. Level 20 link sorts, level 10 SP is going to be a minimum here, and of course for your normal attack damage characters, level 10 attack is very important. Once more, level 20 link sorts, a Chappie, Golden Chappie, and also Hollow Bay with 3 normal attack damage soul traits is all you need to focus on, and doing so, especially with the right character, is going to make this quest a lot easier. Having a closer look at the attribute lineup, this is kind of important, especially when the enemy themselves do have a lot of HP. For the Nightmare Quincy quest in particular, the final boss is going to be a hard character, so using a mind character with Quincy Killer is definitely going to be a lot more ideal here. Likewise for phase 2 in particular, the first boss is going to be a speed character, while the final boss is going to be a technique character, therefore making a power character a lot more ideal here. With that out of the way though, now let's have a look at our go-to melee Quincy killers. So of course, starting off with the best character we can bring here, it is going to be 1000 Year Blood War Ishin. Here, of course, as already stated, is going to have attribute advantage against the final boss, but he's overall going to be a very strong character in any content you put him against, especially in guild quests. He is immune to weakening, so he is immune to the stat summon that we will be seeing. His damage output is ridiculously high, and that's going to carry you throughout this entire quest. Frenzy plus 2, 120% SP boost is great as is, but then he also does get Rampage. Rampage, for those that aren't aware, is more damage, 2% more damage in particular, every time you do get a kill. So every time a wave does start, the character's getting stronger and stronger, and by the time you get to the final boss, the Rampage skill in of itself will almost be maxed out. Now, one thing that I love about Ishin that's going to make him even better in Guild Quest is the Soul Bomb. He is a character that can only inflict burn and lacerate, but his Soul Bomb in particular is lacerate and also weakening. So when you do decide to use your Soul Bomb, at least for the first 2 seconds, the enemy, of course, is then going to get weakened, therefore allowing your whole team to do 50% more damage, but you also are then going to apply weakened defense, allowing your team once more to do 30% even more damage. Overall, a very strong character, and he's going to pair very well thanks to his stat summons with another character you can bring if you have recently pulled him. And that, of course, is going to be the Fierce Battle Grimmjow. Now, this character in particular is going to be one of the MVPs, maybe even more important than Ishin. Maybe not, to be fair, but someone like Grimmjow is going to be a great character here, mainly because he's the only normal attack damage character that we can bring. Every other character that is a melee, Quincy Killer, are all SP characters. So there's no one in your team that is going to be doing reliable, consistent damage to the likes of this character right here. Now, of course, he's going to be very good given his very high normal attack damage output, 70% normal attack damage increase, 40 plus 2 in Guild Quest, and then more melee damage and more killer effects. As I've already stated, the reason why he's going to be really good, especially if you do pull Ishin, is because he is another character that can inflict lacerate, and lacerate as a status element actually stop the enemies from attacking you, because the bosses in particular only use their strong attacks, and if they're inflicted with lacerate, well, they're not going to be using their strong attacks, and they're going to stand there open for attacks. In this case, both Ishin and also Grimmjow can inflict lacerate, and that's going to be really good here because he does do 60% more damage to lacerated enemies. His damage output's already great as is without the extra damage to lacerated enemies, but considering that we have two great characters that just work very well together, you're going to have a very easy time tackling this quest with him in your actual team. He also does come with Start Barrier in the potential chance you aren't using Ishin and you don't have the greatest crowd control. That Start Barrier will definitely help him out, at least allow him to stay at full stamina, which isn't even that big of a deal because none of his skills here want him to be at full stamina. Another good character to bring as a lead, which is quite commendable given that this character is basically a farmer. It's very rare for us to see farmers that are also really good in guild quests, and this Aaroniero is an example of that. Just like Ishin, he's going to make for a good lead and pair very well with Grimmjow. For some reason, it's a very weird pattern that all the melee Quincy killers have lacerate on their attacks. In Aaronioro's case, he can inflict lacerate, which is going to be really good for crowd control. He's immune to the statism in this field, and he has a respectable damage output. Frenzy +2, an 80% SP boost, and then more damage to lacerated enemies. Again, very rare for us to see farmers be also good in guild quests. So if you did pull for this character for the farming purpose, well, now you can get an extra purpose out of him in this current Nightmare melee guild quest. Another great character and someone I know can definitely beat this quest, as I did try him out in the very hard guild quest, is of course going to be Ichibei, a very powerful character, especially if you do pair him with someone like Jushiro or Soifon. These two characters in particular are going to give him 40% more damage to any enemy that is inflicted with status summon, and they are also going to give him 20% more strong attack damage. If you are missing a no attack damage character like Grimmjow, well, a good substitute to make this character even better is going to be one of those two characters. Now, the great thing about Ichibei is that he is a gauge character with a very high damage output when the gauge is active, in this case an additional Frenzy +1 and 100% more Berserker. Naturally built into the character, he only has Frenzy +1, a 50% strong attack damage increase, but once more, when the gauge is active, he is also going to get an additional 50% SP boost, and it is going to reduce the strong attack cooldown by 30%, and given that every time you do defeat a wave, there's like a 2-second cooldown, you're able to spam a lot of your strong attacks. And despite him being a gauge character that also has a low damage output when the gauge is inactive, for the most part, the gauge effect is going to be active throughout the entire quest. He is a bit awkward given he isn't immune to the statism, and in this case he only has paralysis resistance, but you can stand where you want to. It's going to be quite easy playing around with him. And the main thing about this character realistically is that he's just going to be spamming his strong attacks and do a ridiculous amount of damage with it, again, especially if you pair him with someone like Jushiro and also Soifon. Likewise, one great thing about this character that he does have weakened defense, and he is a character where you do want to use your Soul Bomb a lot earlier, not on the final stage, to activate the gauge once more a lot sooner. And upon using the Soul Bomb, you're going to be applying a 30% debuff with the weakened defense skill, and that again is going to allow your team to do even more damage. I think Ishin and also this Ichibei in more particular are going to be two characters that are probably going to solo the guild quest without the need of using a normal attack damage character like Grimmjow. Now, for your other great leads, of course, we can always use someone like Faoujinji Budou Yamamoto. Great crowd control, right? Especially with that SA2, as it is a tracking vortex. And the character itself still does have a good damage output. Frenzy +1, when you apply stat summon, he does get an 80% stat boost. You can apply Weakening and Burn, do more damage to those two status summons, and you also do have Weakened Defense. This character at 1 out of 5, I don't think is going to be good enough for the Nightmare Guild quest, especially if you are lacking Grimmjow to do the consistent normal attack damage. But as this character has been out close to 2 years now, many people have been hunting for this character. If you have him max transcended or especially duped out, I think he's going to be good enough as a lead, especially with that Soul Bomb. The Soul Bomb itself, if you have him max transcended, absolutely nukes for an entire stage. And even if his damage output on strong attack starts to fall off a bit, in a way, because of how powerful his Soul Bomb is, it kind of makes up for it. He can still compete with some of the better and heavier hitters in this game, but I think he definitely does require a bit of extra duplicates, and maybe Grimmjow in particular, to actually beat this quest. Likewise, the same can be said for Lisa. She's a very similar character. The benefit in her case is that she is a mind character, so she does have attribute advantage against the final boss. And in a way, she kind of pairs well with someone like Ishin, because she will be given a 20% strong attack damage increase, and once more can also have an increased chance to inflict lacerate. The benefit of her being premium and in the game for a couple of years now, you might have her duped out. And just like Ishin, which I forgot to mention, you can pair this character with someone like Academy Shuhei, who's also going to give some really good strong attack damage buffs. In this case, a 20% strong attack damage increase. Actually, in this case, she don't need it because she already has the skill built in, but she will be getting 40% more damage to status afflicted enemies. And that's essentially it when it comes to the melee Quincy guild quests. We have received quite a few melee Quincy killers in the last few months, and there's definitely a lot of great characters here despite this being a somewhat new guild quest that recently just split up. But in terms of best teams, there's definitely a lot you can do. I think Ishin, Grimmjow, and then a team booster like Maid Orihime is going to be good enough. If you don't have someone like Grimmjow to be a no attack damage support, Ishin, Academy Shuei, and again, Maid Orihime is going to be great. And then the same can be said for Ichibei, Swimsuit Jushiro, and also Maid Orihime is going to be good enough, especially again if you do like Grimmjow. Noritora and also Grimmjow are going to have some very good synergy together. This team in particular, I'm very curious to see how it's going to handle. It's very rare for us to bring 3 SP characters, but having someone like Ishin and Lisa paired with someone like Academy Shuhei might be actually good. I think these are the 3 main teams that you can bring, but I can say for certain, if you have Ichibei, if you have Ishin, you're definitely going to have an easier time, especially if you have their team supporters and someone like Maid Orihime or Grimmjow in your team. Now, when it comes to the range Espada guild quest, despite this being a guild quest that has been active for the last couple or so years, right? We've always had range Espada guild quests. The character options are definitely still lacking. Of course, our newest and best character you can bring here as a lead, especially if you only have 1 copy of her like myself, is going to be the new 1000G Blood Bowl version of Misaki. In her case, similar to Ishin, has a very high damage output, frenzy +2, a 120% SP boost, and then when you do inflict a status ailment, in her case, she can apply paralysis, which is going to be really good for crowd control, stopping the enemies, allowing your team to potentially stay at full stamina. But in this case, it will allow you to do 80% more damage. So her damage output is going to be very good. And the cherry on top of this character is that her increased chance to inflict paralysis is against any Arrancar. Not just an attribute, every enemy in this quest is very, very likely to get inflicted with a status ailment. In this case, paralysis, which is going to make the quality of life trying to go through all 5 waves with this character going to be really, really good. And then she has some extra survivability too, with the summon in particular, allowing your team to revive in case they do actually end up dying. Her SA2 also is a barrage attack, so it does provide good crowd control and has a very, very good chance of inflicting paralysis, in which you'll then be doing 80% more damage. I think she's going to be the go-to character this week, especially given the fact that the final boss itself is a technique character. Now, most people's go-to character is going to be renewed Aaroniero. In this case, though, I feel like if you don't have him 5 out of 5, he's going to fall a tad bit short, especially if you don't have the good team setup with 2 really good no-attack damage characters to back him up. While he is a premium character, I myself also don't have him max transcended, but the problem with Aaroniero in particular is going to be his damage output, mainly against the final boss, given that is a technique character. His damage output again is good. 80% SP boost, more damage to enemies inflicted with status ailment, Soulbomb hits hard, frenzy +1, 40% Berserker. It's good enough, but I don't think it's going to be maybe enough for the Nightmare Guild quests. One problem I think this character is going to have, despite having really good crowd control, is the fact that the enemies themselves, the Arrancars, might be a bit too tanky. And since he doesn't have killer against the Arrancars, only Espada, you might have a lot of clearing up to do and a lot of wasting time with your side characters not focusing on the main boss because they have to try and defeat all the smaller Arrancars in the quest. I think it's probably the best you have if you don't have Misaki, but this time around, given the final boss is a technique character, it might be a bit awkward using him. Other than those 2 characters, though, another good character to bring, a very weird character given that he is a no-attack damage character, but he is someone that you can use as a main. I've done it in the past and he surprisingly does work well. That's mainly due to the fact that he does have a very high damage output, 40% no-attack damage, flurry +1, more damage and range effect, more killer effect in guild quests, but he also does have an attack boost, which is very rare to see. He is one of the 2 characters in the game to have this skill, so when you do inflict a stat ailment, in this case Drain, which will potentially allow you to stay at full stamina, you are then going to be doing significantly more damage. Another great thing about him too is his Soulbomb. No attack damage characters in particular always use Chappie, so their Soulbombs don't really contribute to anything. In this case though, it will be lowering the enemy's defense by 80%, allowing you to basically do 80% more damage. It's very rare for you to be able to use no attack damage characters as mains in guild quests, and this character unironically is really good as a main or a side, and in some cases works better as a main. If you find that the other Aaroniero renewed isn't working and you don't have Misaki, this might be your backup and maybe go-to. As for your no-attack damage sides, Abirama is going to be a lot of people's go-to. Very high damage output, immune to weakening, 90% no-attack damage, an extra 20% to technical Arrancars, more range damage in guild quests, more killer effect in guild quests, and also flurry +1. Very consistent damage output. None of his damage here is tied behind inflicting a status ailment or getting an attack boost, so every single hit is going to be doing the same. Somewhat fast, strong attacks too, so if he does decide to use a strong attack, it's not going to slow your quest down too much. Premium character too, been out in the game for a while. Maybe you have this character duped out. I know for a lot of people, he's going to be the go-to no attack damage character. And then if possible, follow that up with Yukio. another technique normal attack damage character, and in his case he's very similar to Aaroniero, good normal attack damage output, gets increased in Guild Quest, he has exactly what you want, but the best part about him is that he does have an SA2 team boost with the booster skills, so he's going to provide the role as your team booster, giving your characters 43% extra attack and also focus, which is very important for normal attack damage characters such as himself. Going to be really good as a normal attack damage character, although the problem with using him and Aaroniero in your team is that you don't have really good crowd control, no barrier characters in particular, but that's something you can maybe forgive given that he himself is actually doing a lot of damage output while also keeping your team with extra stats. So I'd like to say the general good team that you can bring this time around is Misaki as your main, and then using Aaroniero and also Yukio as your sides, you can replace Aaroniero with the other Okiura. Likewise, maybe it's worth a shot using 3 normal attack damage characters, in this case Aaroniero, Yukio, and then Okiura as your main, and then at the same time again we can bring the other Okiura. There's only 2 normal attack damage characters you can bring here, technically 3, and realistically there's only like 5 good characters you can bring, and they all kind of work together. Masaki's definitely going to be the best lead for this quest. Paired with Aaroniero, I think it's going to be good enough. If you don't have Yukio, just replace him with any other team booster, as always someone like Maid or Hime. With that said, though, lads, that was the video for today, going over the upcoming Nightmare Guild Quest. We are going to be live when Phase 1 does roll around. I'm excited to try it out. Fairly confident I can beat it using my Ichibe team, as I did perform very well in the very hard Guild Quests. Unfortunately, I won't be in the country when Phase 2 rolls around, so I won't be able to get a video on that. But hopefully this guide was able to help you out on what characters, what teams to bring. These might be some of the more difficult ones out there when it comes to Nightmare GQ, given the lack of options. But of course, as always, if you do have the right character, it should be relatively easy. I'm fairly confident I will be able to beat both phases, and I'm excited to try it out. Either way, hope you guys enjoyed the video. See you guys next time. Take care, and peace.